Okay, so yeah, the buy-in of stakeholders is important at all stages, and we need to cover both the specification of the required improvements, so you know what we're actually going to do, as well as testing of those improvements. Does it work? So when that testing is conducted, then obviously the stakeholders need to be engaged. And then actually once the improvements have been developed, then obviously there will be drafting and a manual and all of the documentation associated with that, and hopefully stakeholders can be involved in that as well. And it's envisaged that there would be 3 different types of forum group. And again, this is a proposal, so obviously we'd be really interested to hear everybody's ideas on this. But at the moment, the idea would be there'd be a broad expert group. I guess something like, in essence, something like a PEG, but maybe sort of a top-level type of thing. Then there would be a smaller preparation committee. And then, where needed, there would also be specific groups that would focus on specific topics. So it's kind of like a tiered system. So I guess that the top level would be the kind of the broader coverage. But if you wanted to discuss things at very technical levels, then obviously that would then be done at the sort of within the smaller groups. So I guess we're going to explain in a bit more detail. So the expert group would act as a soundboard. It would cover, hopefully, membership from authorities, from industry, and from other industries, interested stakeholders, including academia. So that would be, and relax. Okay, and it's also important, obviously, that we've got people, stakeholders that are covering all sorts of different backgrounds in terms of, different users that use REACH. So people use the EUSES. So we've got people that use it for REACH, for biocides, for pesticides, and also potentially for fertilizers. And so we'd like to have membership of that expert group to, try and cover all of those interested parties. And the expert group will be informed on the different steps and the progress of the project via email. And there will also be an invitation to members of the RAC, to the BPC, to Caracal, ESSA, and DGJRC to be involved in that as well. So that will be sent out, I think, after the workshop. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the expert group is going to be set up after the workshop, but the idea is that it won't become active until after the pre-study. I guess there was a discussion yesterday about that there's going to be a pre-study in the future, and so the idea would be that the expert group wouldn't really become active until after that pre-study is finished, but it will be set up after this workshop. So we can start to get the structure in place so that once the full scope of the project is agreed, then this is when the expert group will then start to become active. Okay, the next step down would be the preparation committee, and the preparation committee would decide when the expert group needs to be contacted. So, the expert group, as I've mentioned, could have a lot of members and could be generally rather broad in its overview. And so the preparation committee is going to be a smaller, more focused group that's following more closely the activities of the organising committee, and will reach out to the expert group and tell them, inform them of developments and engage them as appropriate. I think I've just explained that second point. And then finally, at the kind of the more detailed end, there's a proposal for an expert topic group, as I mentioned before. As I understand was discussed yesterday, there was a whole list of topics that were presented, and they are proposals for topics to be included in the first instance pre-study to be conducted by ECHA, and then in theory then they will then, or some of those will then go on to be implemented in an update of the EUSES. Of those topics, some may require some specific expert discussion to explore technical aspects, to review some of the technical input potentially to the pre-study as well, if that's feasible. I know there's going to be a timing challenge, but in theory that could possibly happen. And then, of course, as we said, to perform focus testing once the project is fully launched. Obviously, you saw yesterday that there are, 27 different topics, a huge number of different topics, and covering all of those topics with individual topic groups sounds like a huge burden of work. So it's likely that there might not be topic groups for everything. In fact, it's highly unlikely there would be. And even if there were, then there will be groups. So it's only really where there is a necessity to focus on some of the detail. Because some of these things are, I'd like to say, fairly straightforward. I don't know. Anyway, so that, I believe, is a proposal, a suggestion. And I'd like to open the floor to your reflections, suggestions. Is there any way that we can make this better, more inclusive, get some more constructive input into the project?
Is there possible to approach people who maybe aren't in the regular scheme or are
Absolutely. That would be, thoroughly encouraged that academia, hopefully, I mentioned somewhere that academia would be involved in the process. And again, at what level is the question. So, it almost for sure would be at the top level of the kind of the overview. I thought we've got the name of the group, or was it the expert group? But then there might also be a necessity to call in, if there were specific experts from academia that had a particular interest in a particular area that could, in theory, be, I guess, contributing to the more detailed topic group as appropriate.
Just curious, focus model group used to kind of work in terms of putting together model evaluations on a regular basis and updating the model. I don't know exactly how that functioned as a group. It was. Everybody has an insight, perhaps building on that kind of example might be useful in a situation scenario for the users.
That's a great idea, and this proposal has probably come from our colleagues within the Industry Association, CEFIC. But I think it's a great idea to look at existing precedents, and obviously the focus modelling groups is a really good example there. So yeah, I mean we could take that as a suggestion and say maybe look at the focus groups and see how that works and see if there's any kind of learnings that we can take from that to organise this. Yeah, cool. Yeah.
No, I think that in that case there was actually a resource that was available to support that group. But I don't know, getting a sense of what the resource is at supporting a group within the EUSES.
The detail of resourcing this type of thing hasn't really yet been discussed. At the moment, I guess the proposal at least would be for volunteers to be involved in the various different groups, and I understand that there will be a request after the workshop for volunteers, and that will then go to, I think I mentioned, to some of the other groups as well, the RAC, etc., etc. But in terms of sort of the structure, that's not yet been discussed, whether or not there could be, facilitation from whether ECHA or, CEFIC or whatever, that side of things is not yet.
Just maybe, so at the moment, CEFIC somehow with volunteers is not very clear. We have received yesterday a link to the platform, and there's a number of questions there on how we feel we would like to. So, I think we want to do that.
Maybe just a quick addition that your list of sectors is probably not complete, but I think the metals should really be added to that list, given all the contributions they made yesterday in the discussion.
Sorry, I missed that. Who should be added?
The metals.
Oh, of course. Yes, yes. Great contribution. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, and then on the governance, it was also not clear to me who is really going to lead this, but maybe the same as what Elaine just said, that it needs to be sorted out, where's who's going to do all that.
Absolutely, the structure and is not yet agreed. Frank?
Yeah, so Frank shared from the point. So from comparing my setting, I think in setting was kind of logical, that we would ask volunteers through the policy in our working group. Within that group, we have kind of a HESA subgroup, so we need to see whether we can host it in the HESA group, connected to that, or whether it's something, depending on volume, and we might actually think about having a specific group, and then we try to expert we have in that group. We have around about 60 people that are in that broad group, and we need to see who would be volunteering. So that's definitely, I think, the kind of logical way, for volunteers in that group. That's something I would say.
So that would be seeking volunteers within CEPIC?
We would try to at least, because there are technical people in that group, we have some in the room already, so
yeah.
we could definitely try and see, what we can do there. But it's possible always play a hand in glove with Ethicos, so on the other hand, I'm pretty sure we would do in Ethicos as well. Yeah, there's definitely two starting points, and maybe a combined group.
And I'm certainly aware of, obviously, the biocides group within CEPIC, for example. So, there might be a cross-sectional part within CEPIC that there are numerous parties within that organisation that could be interested. Yeah.
Yesterday we had a lot of presentations with sharing techniques, we need people who have the skills to understand clearly in detail what will be the verification needed, and maybe people with the skills to challenge what has been done, or is it only people who are users of it and who have to give feedback on if it really modification are really useful for users and great fun for consumers. Really bring specific skills.
Ideally, yes. If particularly if we were talking about if there was a discussion on specific topics, then obviously that specific skills and expertise in those particular topics would be obviously very useful. I guess at the higher level, a familiarity with EUSES and practical experience of EUSES and understanding the implications of the proposed changes, I guess would be required.
But I have the impression that in the proposal, for example, this topic expert, I can't remember what.
Yeah, I know.
And the expert topic groups, so this is more, really high expertise to contribute to the development of the functional, of the specific content.
Mm-hmm.
I have the impression that, for example, this expert group, which will be more wider, would, for example, be involved also in testing, I would imagine.
Yeah, yes.
Meaning that it's also, I think it's a bit of a mix, that you can also contribute testing, even if you are not really the expert to the level that you can contribute to the implementation and defining the specifications for it.
So,
I think it's really needed that whatever is developed, Sorry. It was mentioned yesterday in the science that there were things that were wrong, right? That needed to be fixed. And these groups would need to actually ensure that the science that was in is correct. And then the higher level would actually invalidate but I think if this level is not functional, there will never be results.
Yeah, I think that's what is envisaged here. That this is if there's a requirement for clarifying scientific underpinning of particular topics, then it would be done in that forum, and then obviously that would then feed into the overview, which, as you said, could facilitate the testing and those sorts of things. Okay. Thank you very much.